this. I'm not going to have you on and not enough about the money pieces of things. So let's just go right to it. First of all, what would you teach children about money? Because I think a lot of adults who have an elementary understanding still of money, to no fault of their own. It's not taught in school. I learned geometry and algebra. I haven't used it since. Actually, I'm not even really sure I ever learned it. I'm pretty sure I cheated off Melissa Ramos's paper for 3 years. But aside from that, even had I learned it, I never used it since.
Never.
I would have loved some basic budgeting, like how to read a financial statement, some of that stuff. So what advice would you give to somebody? What would you teach your kids about money?
So I want to say one thing before we get into all of this, because like we shared, there's a lot of things, right? The accolades, the lists, the things that overcome. But I want to make sure everyone knows that there is nothing about my story. There is nothing about my journey. There's nothing that extraordinary. I wasn't that smart. I wasn't that connected. I just did a lot of ordinary things. So this isn't going to be some like life-changing innovation that we're going to, charter a rover to Pluto. Like these are going to be very basic things that anyone can do. And I think that where the schools really miss are teaching basic fundamentals. And I mean, it could be as simple as like we were saying, don't take on bad debt.
Yep.
Don't buy the car because you can make the payment. Just because you can make the payment doesn't mean you can afford it. If you can't actually write a check for something, you cannot afford it.
Period.
But what people want to do is that they want to look like they can afford something, so they take the payment as opposed to writing a check for the car that they can actually afford.
Yep.
And so I think that's key. And our kids are only going to do what we do. They're not going to listen to what we say.
Yeah, caught, not taught.
Yes,
Yep.
caught, not taught, yes.
Yep.
So if you are telling them, hey, you don't want to take on bad debt and you don't want to live with beneath your means and you want to save and you want to give, but you're not actively doing those things, you're a hypocrite.
Right.
So it's like first you got to be able to do these things and teach them to kids so that you can close the gap where the schools leave out. So a lot of it is, I think one of the quickest things you could do for kids is if you give your kids anything, an allowance or, make sure that instead of just buying them the next thing, that you give them a way to budget their own money. Let's say instead of giving them, we're just going to go buy your clothes. You say to them, you have $300 for school clothes. I don't care if you buy a $500 or a $150 pair of shoes and 2 shirts, or if you buy 14 shirts and pants, but you have $300 and I'm not giving you a dime more.
Great idea.
And you allow them to look at prices and figure out what they want and be able to go shop sales and maybe look on Amazon or online to find it cheaper. But oftentimes I see parents just shopping.
Very good.
So that's one quick lesson.
Shoot, I wish I would have done that. No, for real. That's great.
Right?
Okay.
And then it helps them if they ever want to build a business or just with their own family, how to budget money. Another one is my late friend Ann always did this with her 3 kids, and she actually came from money. So this is a really hard thing, I think, for people with money to even do. But she would have her kids, she would give them whatever their allowance was for the month, and they could only spend half. They had to invest 25%. They had to give 25%, then they could spend 50%. So what are you actually teaching your kids, right? We can say, make sure that you donate. But if you're not actually framing it in a way that they can be successful, kids, I see it every day at the shelter, kids love to get involved in causes that they can see. Donating their birthday presents to a charity instead of just collecting more junk that's going to sit in a landmine year down the road is a great way. Getting them involved and helping and giving back. Like, we didn't have a lot, of course, but I remember every Christmas going to Hills. Do you remember Hills department store? And they had a tree with little angels on it, and you could pull a kid's name off a tree.
Yep.
And I knew that meant I got one less gifts because we only had so much. But I remember that. I remember pulling the angels and giving the gifts far more than anything I ever got. And that's so important. And so I think some of those things are really, really key, making sure
you're
that...
totally wrong about one thing, where you said, like, what you're going to say isn't revolutionary or life-changing. That really was. Like, I've raised 2 great kids. I wish I'd have done both those things. Like, that's really a big deal. Teaching them how to... I want to go back through it. It was just... It's super good. It's really, really good. I get the feeling, well, I know,